Chapter 4 of The Tower of Dago by more Jokai. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Carolyn. Chapter 4 The Sorcerer. The master of the Tower of Dago spoke the truth. It was really the powers of darkness that helped him to make the rocks and water into bread and wine. He also stated a simple fact when he declared that the agent in the transformation was the furnace in the observatory at the summit of the tower. It was in the following manner that this work of sorcery was accomplished. On a day when the position of the barometer and the cries of the seagulls announced the approach of a storm, the Apostle of Dago assembled his companions in a subterranean chamber of his tower. This vault was called the chapel. It contained a pulpit from which the master himself was in the habit of exhorting his flock. It was, indeed, a strange chapel. And what frightful exhortations were these! Exhortations to the perpetration of all manner of misdeeds and cruelty, the 10 Commandments of God reversed, perpetual enmity towards all mankind, and especially towards their own land, their dearest friends, their fathers and brothers, sin in its deepest depth of depravity raised aloft as a virtue, faithlessness and treachery the highest duty, and the malediction of the world the most perfect bliss. Such was the gospel of Dago. While the master uttered these doctrines, his little son sat on the pulpit steps at his feet, so that he might early imbibe the frightful precepts in all childish simplicity, and continue their propagation when his father should have gone to his own place. The song of praise was never raised in the chapel, only the sound of scornful, scoffing laughter was ever heard. Overthrow the 10 Commandments, be false, covet what is thy neighbor's, kill, steal, dishonor thy father's father, and the greatest father of all, the Tsar. Seek out for thyself a lovely flower whose name is woman. Pluck it, then crush it, and cast it away when all its fragrance is fled. Doubtless the child understood but little as yet of such doctrines as those to which he was compelled to listen. Tonight or tomorrow night we hold high festival. Upon this announcement being made, the inmates hastened to bring their small boats out of their concealment in the vault. These vessels were constructed to hold 3 men each, and were made of light wood covered with stout leather. They were then placed in readiness in a narrow creek leading from the vault out into the open sea. As the storm at length began to break, the men were certain to be sitting ready in their boats, awaiting the expected sacrifice. And as certainly it came. As night began to fall, the master ascended alone the observatory. He at once lighted the furnace and heightened its brilliancy by means of lime and oxygen. He then removed the wainscot from the 3 walls opposite the large windows facing the sea. Behind the wainscot were immense concave mirrors of burnished steel. These now reflected back the dazzling light from the furnace in 3 directions away to the distant horizon. Before the exercises of the night it was customary to ring the chapel bell. This was an enormous bell, which had once been taken as a booty. It was suspended in a secret chamber beneath the observatory, and on being rung, Its rumbling notes sounded through a semicircular window of the tower far out into the night. The tower had no opening on the land side, and the inhabitants of the island could neither see the light of the furnace nor hear the tolling of the bell. Every ship which appeared on the horizon in a stormy night must inevitably fall a prey to this diabolical stratagem. In the channel connecting the Baltic with the Gulf of Finland, there were two lighthouses, one on the Swedish coast at Gustavsvarn, and another on the Finnish coast near Revel. Even on a stormy night, seamen might easily have steered their course by these two lights. But the devil's apostle in the Tower of Dago confused them with his light and the sound of his bell. The mariners imagined that one of the two lighthouses known to them lay before them. They felt sure that the light beckoned them on to safety. So, with heartfelt thanks to God for his mercy, they steered directly towards it, and about an hour later were dashed against the rocks of Dago. Then, as signals for help and cries of terror rose above the roar of wind and sea, the small boats swarmed forth from their concealment and boarded the stranded vessel. The crew killed all who were still alive on board, and plundered everything of value to be found: money, bales of goods, and provisions. They then carried everything ashore and stored it in the lower vaults of the tower. Such an expedition would often have to be repeated twice or thrice in a single night, for the deceptive light enticed vessels from 3 different quarters, and all went into the trap. The master was careful to extinguish the light about 2 hours before daybreak, in order that no vessel should make towards his stronghold in broad daylight. Of his victims, not one man was ever left alive. They had, indeed, leagued themselves with all the fiends of darkness and the storm, in defiance of both heaven and earth. This, then, was the sorcery by which they drew bread, meat, wine, and fruit from the rocks and the sea. It was the stranded vessels that filled the chambers and vaults of the Tower of Dago with everything dear to the heart of man, and covered the rocky shore beneath the tower with that which was now dearest of all to its inmates' hearts: the fleshless bones of their brother men. End of chapter 4.